And as the Bahamian people know, election won't be late on my watch. There'll be no stenching if we don't win. We leave if we lose. We wish the other side, Mr. Speaker, would learn that. We've had 2 experiences so far of changing government in the Bahamas, and the contrast between 2 parties like night and day. First of all, we won the election clearly and convincingly on 19th of August, 1992, but we couldn't get sworn in until the 21st.
Yep.
We lost the election in 2002 on May 2nd. The following day, the new government was sworn in.
Yep. The way you do it.
We won the election on May 2nd, 2007. Could not get sworn in before May 4th, 2007. Nothing speaks more loudly about the culture and the commitment to democracy of both political parties than those 2 examples. We have a long record, Mr. Speaker, and emotional and empty charges leveled against the budget will not erase the good that this budget is doing in bringing potable water to Eleuthera, docks in Long Island and Andros, new classrooms in Anagua, new Bidcat Island, Spanish Wells or Mastic Point, the fire station in Freeport, facilities in 8 Mile Rock, the fort, the bridge in Abaco, the tower and terminal in Marsh Harbor, fresh water for thousands in East Indian Providence, and the list goes on and on. One of the interesting things I thought to speak about the budget was we've been heavily criticized by members opposite for investing in national insurance funds in Commonwealth Brewery. Say we're investing in a liquor company. Now these are shares that are held by a foreigner that we are requiring to be sold to Bahamians. They were originally held by Bahamians. They were required to be held by Bahamians. Bahamians didn't pick up all the shares because, for whatever reason, we want to make sure these shares eventually go only to Bahamians. It could have been sold to foreigners or permanent residents. We want them only to Bahamians. And we said we would hold them and put them back on the market at a later date for Bahamians only. But members opposite say that because they trade in and they manufacture or make alcoholic beverages, that we should not have used the national insurance funds to do so. Now, neither members opposite nor the churches in the Bahamas have ever argued that we shouldn't collect taxes from liquor companies. Everybody should collect their taxes.
Sin taxes.
These are sin taxes. Bring the sin tax. We tax them heavily. It goes into the government bank account. It pays for the public services in the Bahamas, pays our salaries, and the public service salaries. And nobody has ever argued that we shouldn't use the money for that.
They argue we shouldn't charge right their rate.
Indeed, Mr. Speaker, for some of the members who are arguing strongly over there, when some of their members, and at least 2 of our members, were collecting their dividends from the same liquor company and contributing a part of their dividends to our political parties, we didn't argue against that. Bring the money. Now all of a sudden they got religion. No, Mr. Speaker, I think that's a non-point. I think we ought to leave it there. Little of consequence, Mr. Speaker, has been said in this debate, made up of us as politicians, this House, except to say it's a political budget. Well, what do they expect? They wear a church budget? I am a politician. We do want to win the next election. We want to keep you out.
So do they.
What do you want us to do? Do something to get you in? I read, Rick Lowe from Nassau Motors, who writes little letters now and again. Sometimes they could be favorable towards us. Many times they're not. But I found a nice little one he wrote in the paper called A Politician. He said, the politicians who make up the present government have released their budget for the next 12 months. Meanwhile, the politician that is the leader of the official opposition is quoted in the press as saying the budget is an election ploy designed to get votes, while the only independent politician is quoted as saying that the budget is political. Well, the dictionary says that a politician is a person who's professionally involved in politics, especially the holder of a candidate for elected office. So shouldn't one expect a politician to be political or attempt to get votes? Politicians confuse me. Sincerely, Rick.
That was a good line.
I do feel, Mr. Speaker, obliged to comment on some specific things said by some members opposite.
Mm-hmm.
And I begin with the member for Elizabeth. Because he adopted what is in his characteristic style of stringing together outrageous statements, one after the other, in a pretense of financial acumen. Among his gems this time were several beauties like this. If one looks at the finances of the Bahamas, of the country, one could very well conclude the Bahamas is insolvent. Of course, Standard & Poor's, Moore's, the IMF, the banking sector, the world doesn't believe that. We have an investment grade. Our external reserves at the highest level ever in the history of the Bahamas. Over $1 billion as compared to $142 million in 1992. Our debt to GDP is 44% at the end of this fiscal period, and it's by far amongst the lowest in the region, and less than 1/2 of that of the United States of America.
Yep.
Less than 1/2.
His former country.
His country. How he arrives at the conclusion of Bahamian insolvency is not explained. He just makes the outrageous statement. He laments the recurrent budget deficit, Mr. Speaker, which occurred during the greatest economic crisis the world has seen since the period of the Great Depression, but failed to acknowledge that his party, in office, over a 5-year period, accumulated a recurrent budget deficit, a deficit to pay salaries, electricity, water, of $400 million during a 5-year period.
What?
In the best of times. Dead serious.
They borrowed money to pay salaries?
Know what that's saying? He railed against, and I hear him over there all the time. I heard the member for North Andros to Berry Islands. That being the $30 billion man.
Chief propaganda.
He railed. He says, we increased the national debt from $2.89 billion to $4.25 billion, which is an increase of 47%. Remember that. An increase of 47%. The FNM increased the national debt by, in the period of economic crisis. In the period of economic crisis, we increased the national debt in relation to GDP by 47%.
That's the money in the bag, man.
He should note that on his government's watch, when they were in office, a time of economic prosperity, according to them, the national debt increased from $1.98 billion to $2.89 billion, or an increase of 46%.
Yes.
In good times.
Yes. How you explain that?
In good times.
How you explain that?
A differential of 1%.
How you explain that?
Now all of a sudden it's a crisis.
Yes. How you explain that?
That's,
See if you could get one
that's transparent.
Explain that.
That's transparent.
And then come back.
And then ask the public of the Bahamas to compare, where they can see on the ground, feel and touch where the money went over the last 5 years as opposed to what you left after.
No surprise.
And the increase in national debt on his part is what occurred during a period of global economic well-being. Now, one can overlook the stridency with which the member for Elizabeth makes his outrageous statements, except he makes them with the pretense of soundness and credibility that is somewhat difficult to ignore or not to call him out on. I'm also obliged, Mr. Speaker, to correct a number of misstatements uttered by the member for North Andros in the Berry Islands. No, sir, it is not true. It is untrue to say that 736 Bahamians were dismissed by BTC day before yesterday, or today, or tomorrow, or next month, or next year. It is not true. You shouldn't tell untruths in the House.
Yes.
Wow.
The member also claimed in this budget debate, Mr. Speaker, that the government has neglected to show the expenditure for the $39 million that we are going to contribute towards the pension trust fund for BTC workers. None are so blind, Mr. Speaker, as those who refuse to see. Provide the member for me, please, Mr. Clerk of the House, a copy of the supplementary appropriation bill tabled in this House,
Which he was here.
where he will see that there's a supplementary appropriation for 40 million, 39 for the BTC Trust, 1 million for water in Greenhill, Key Abaco, and $200,000 for housing repairs.
Yep.
Give him a copy of the supplementary appropriation bill, since he don't appear to have forgotten it
You may
or
have to
managed
mark
to
it.
misplace it.
You may have to highlight it, though.
One of the things, Mr. Speaker, members ought to do, before they make statements, they ought to seek to verify them, especially a former minister. Not to get up here and just make outrageous statements. Then, because, he complained and said that the government spend too much money in Abaco because we built a new port in North Abaco. I wonder whether the member remembers the two ports that were built in Andros that we paid for. Two ports, one in Driggs Hill and one in Morgan's Bluff in his constituency. It ain't Abaco's fault that Driggs Hill's port is useless, built in the wrong location, and a complete waste of public funds. And whenever you go to South Andros, go and look at it. Unbelievable that anybody could have made such a decision. Well, Speaker, it is not our fault that the member for North Andros, and he gave me an opportunity to put this in the record of the House, wasted the monies that they spent in his constituency while he was in office. I want to read, Mr. Speaker, this minute, and then I'm going to sign it and table it. I would have liked to blank the names out, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to put the whole thing in. They announced this big subdivision that they were going to build in North Andros, Mr. Speaker. And this is a synopsis of this subdivision of 63.7 acres of land at a place they called Breezy Hill Subdivision, north of San Andres Airport.
Whose constituency is that?
North Andros, his constituency. And so I want to read the synopsis, and if anybody cares to, I have all the backup documentation to prove what the synopsis say. But only the synopsis I propose to put on the table. In 2003, the Department of Housing expressed an interest in the granting of 3 pieces of land in North Andros for housing development and regularization of persons who were leasing from the Department of Lands and Survey. Developments on one parcel of the land, however, commenced in 2005, before the grant was received. On the 18th of December 2007, the minister responsible for housing received a Crown grant for the land referred to as Breezy Hill, which the government was in the process of developing. First point I make. 2003, they said they're going to develop this subdivision. They started in 2005, but the Minister of Housing couldn't get title from the Minister of Lands before they got kicked out of office when we came in, we gave the Minister of Housing title to the land in December of that year. The survey of the land was done by Mr. I continue in a minute, Mr. Speaker. The survey of the land was done by Mr. Alvin Young for the sum of $36,650. The road works were commenced by Mr. Wendell Gator of Andrews Farms Limited. The original contract was for $150,082. That was later revised to $516,000 due to a redesign of the subdivision for the inclusion of 4 additional lots. Later, Mr. Gator submitted a bill for additional works due to the correction of defects in the subdivision. That is, filling and compacting of 23 cavities in the land. The cost of that was $459,880. This work received no authorization or approval before it was carried out. The Director of Housing for Technical Services recommended a reduced payment in the amount of $298,980, consequent to an assessment done after the work had been commenced. This matter was included as part of the police investigation into operations of Ministry of Housing, and no further payments were made. The police reported that this matter severely criticized the Ministry's handling of the matter, particularly the decision to make payments on the additional works against the advice of the technical officer without seeking the advice of the Attorney General's office. As recommended by the police report, the matter was referred by the Ministry of Housing to the Attorney General's office in 2010. To date, it is evident that payments of $499,770.80 were paid on the contract of $516,000, leaving a balance of $16,222. Additionally, $250,000 was paid on the additional work of $459,000, leaving a balance of $209,000. In addition to funds paid to Messrs. Young and Gator, payments of $50,310 were made to Apex Utilities for trenching and waterworks, and $33,500 to build Simmons Construction as mobilization for road works. Documents are attached for reference. And so, do not blame us in Aberco if you frittered away the monies you had. And I draw no conclusion as to why you would have given Mr. Wendell Gator this big contract, a known F&M who switched side and joined your side at the last election. Oh, Mr. Speaker, the subdivision is not complete. It has no water, no electricity, no telephone, no paved roads. No one lives there. It's not a full subdivision.
Are you serious?
Some land was just cleared, the roads pushed in, and that is where it's at. If you ever go down there, you can go through the bush, and you can find the places. In fact, in some cases, Mr. Speaker, I'm reminded you need an airboat to get to the place.
Yeah.
Floodplain.
There's no such subdivision. Money gone.
Can be brought up. Ordered that the document do lie on the table.
Cool down. Is there anybody else?
No, that's just was one today. Mr. Speaker, the member has similarly, the member for North Andros and various, has similarly neglected to say that the F&M government is replacing 2 bridges in South Andros, one at Little Creek and Deep Creek, and the other Deep Creek, and a dock in Central Andros is Fresh Creek. All matters left undone by he and his colleagues when they were last in office. And it is not Aberco's fault, Mr. North Andros, that hundreds of thousands of dollars in the subdivision that never came to be, in pursuit of a re-election by you, was squandered down there. And I'm not talking about what was squandered in South Andros at Mangrove Key. That's a different story for a different day.
Altogether. Yes, sir.
We are matching north for north.
But it's South Africa, we don't have 3 candidates.
Speaker, the member also complained about the plight of farmers in North Andros. And I wish to advise, as a result of my government's policies of encouraging innovation and production, most especially through the BAIC and the ministry, but especially through the BAIC, innovation production, Andros farmers are today producing more than ever. We celebrate their accomplishments and work with them. I regret, Mr. Speaker, that 2 huge watermelons sent to me by Mr. Leonard Noah Newton. One was given to my sister who cut hers, and they cut mine in the house, but I would have loved to have brought them to the house for members to see. Very sweet watermelon out of Andros, and onions. They're doing wonderful. I trust that something will be done with their packing house to ensure that there's adequacy for the farmers of Andros. They're making great strides. In his remarks, the Minister of Agriculture noted that Andros farmers had begun harvesting onions in February. And this year, for the first time, they have an effective prohibitive tariff to be able to allow Andros farmers to sell your onions in the local market.
Yes. Chairman of BAIC.
And the same protective tariff that can be put in place for any of the fruits, watermelon, name it. Avocados, mangoes. Anytime there's adequacy in the local market. But to seek to tell the farmers that what the F&M government is doing is against their interests is really deceitful and, quite frankly, downright dishonest, because no such thing is happening. And the good part about it is that you can tell it in the harvesting of Andros right now, where Andros is able to compete for what is called the sweet onion, dominated by the Vidalia and Walla Walla onions. Plainly, farmers who are able to supply the market can earn far higher prices for their products in the southeastern United States. The Department of Agriculture is now working with them to exploit these markets while they deepen the penetration in the Bahamian market, because they can export. The member would also know, Mr. Speaker, that the support arranged through the Ministry of Agriculture and BAIC for farmers in Andros and elsewhere to sell their products directly to institutional customers, hotels and restaurants is working well, quite well. And I thank you, Mr. Noah Newton, for the watermelons and the onions. But next time, Noah, only send me 1 watermelon. I can't handle 2 one time, even though I love watermelons. This is also an opportune time, since I'm talking about the member for North Andros, who I've chosen as my poster boy for the time being.
You're focused.
We are focused on him in more than one way. We are focused on his seat, which we expect to pick up in the next election. This is also, Mr. Speaker, perhaps an opportune time to advise that the government has determined, since he raised the issue, the government is determined to discontinue the barging of water from Andros. As the public would know, we've been barging water from Andros since, I think, the 70s or 80s. It was never intended to be a permanent solution to New Providence water shortage. It was always intended to be a temporary arrangement. But for nearly 30 years now, if not more, over 30 years, we have been barging water from Andros to Nassau. We are now finally in a position to discontinue barging water from Andros. We thank you very much for supplying us water when you could. We are now able to do without having to barge our water to Nassau. And also the quality of the water has deteriorated. And also the cost of barging is more expensive than water can be accessed here in Nassau by reverse osmosis. And so based upon all these things, it is now cheaper, less expensive for the Water Corporation to access water by reverse osmosis in Nassau than to barge it from Andros. So at the end of this year, the Water Corporation is expected to discontinue the barging operation. Now I'm told that December. Right? December, right? Yeah. The Chaldea. As a result of this decision, the Water and Sewage Corporation looked at its North Andros and Central Andros operations to determine the best deployment of the human resources it has there. I'm told that there are 26 persons employed between North and Central Andros, 14 directly involved in the barging operations. The Water and Sewage Corporation informs that they have met with the personnel in Andros and those here at Ararat Key on the receiving end to undertake an assessment. Persons were reviewed by their age, years of service, and skills in order to determine how best to accommodate redeployment and early retirement. 12 persons will be offered retirement and or redundancy packages, and we have told them that those packages cannot be less favorable than the packages being offered by BTC to the workers there. Now, where you been? Mr. Speaker, members' office will continue to make hollow claims that the budget is to make sufficient allocation to fight effective anti-crime campaign. On opening this debate, I sought to put the lie to those allegations, demonstrating where monies were being expended to engage crime fighters, to acquire, there's no success to be had with those who refuse to see or to believe. If I say it is day, you will say it is night. The public know and accept that your criticism of me is not based upon merit. It is just that whatever I do, you have to find something to say against it. They know that. But you keep on doing what you're doing. You make me stronger than I was the day before. To acquire additional crime-fighting equipment, Speaker, to expand our courts at the magistrates and Supreme Court level, to engage additional counsel in the Office of the Attorney General, to construct a remand court up at Fox Hill, to continue and augment urban renewal programs, which they say to be discontinued, always a lie, never discontinued it. Not only the programs here in New Providence, but also in Grand Bahama, and to expand programs in our schools, promoting peaceful resolution of disputes, self-respect, and respect for others. And of course, I alluded to the continued initiatives to amend our laws to match the level of sophistication of today's criminals and to restrict the too generous award of bail to individuals charged with violent offenses. Regrettably, Speaker, this House has witnessed what I regard as the most shameless politicization of crime during this debate, in my memory, recent memory. The assumed fervor that a magic bullet has not been discovered in the last 4 years, as if that was the beginning of the scourge of serious crime in our land 4 years ago when we came to office. That was the beginning. There was no such crime situation before we came to office. It would be laughable had it not been serious, the issue we face. With almost venomous vitriol. The member for Care Island, Rumpke, and San Salvador heap blame upon the government for the continuance of crime in our country over the last 4 years, and for the absence, as he sees it, of a plan in the budget for crime's eradication. He discreetly draws a line to speak of demarcation at the end of his party's last term in office and this government's present term in office, when the plan for crime's eradication should have been working its wonderful magic. He notes how our citizens deserve the right to live, work, and move about peaceably. A right he seems to suggest they didn't have before, since he clearly would not suggest it was not fulfilled. by his side. He notes that crime has dissolved the social fabric that binds Bahamians together, a dissolution which he presumes to have occurred only in the last 4 years. And then he turns to the need to expand the resources employed to fight crime. But never have those resources been more generous and more in evidence than on our watch. Nevertheless, Mr. Speaker, notwithstanding all of that, I want to welcome the member for Cat Island, Rum Key, and San Salvador to the people's side on the issue of crime. I want to welcome our side, the people's side on crime.
Yep.
In previous debate in this place, I didn't always glean that he was on the people's side. His contributions, as I recall them, were skewed in favor of the lawbreakers and not the people. There was much consternation by him during debate on amendments to the Bail Act and other laws meant to reduce the number of persons on bail for serious crimes and or increased punishment. I welcome Cat Island, Rum Key, and San Salvador member to our side, the side of the people against crime and criminals. Criminals must not be harbored, cloaked, or comforted.
Yep.
It is always heartening, though, Mr. Speaker, when a sinner professes to have changed, and I'm always especially pleased when a poacher becomes a warden. I say no more. Speaker, the member for Bain and Grandstown, yeah, I mean, if you would tell the police who will rob you outside your house, we would catch that robber, you know.
Yep.
We thought we had him.
That'll be one of them people off the street.
You wouldn't identify him. You wouldn't have identified the man. You wouldn't identify the man. Man who jumped you outside your house, you should be able to identify him. All the lights were on. Nobody heard anything inside. Just beat you up. Where you been? Mr. Speaker, the member for Bain and Grandstown also had a lot to say about crime. I recall that he chaired a House Committee on Crime. And he might wish to point to recommendations of that committee that might be implemented to help us alleviate this crime that we are fighting now. Yes?
Honourable member for Bain and Grandstown.
You are aware that after the House prorogued, I asked for the committee to be reappointed. The members here agreed unanimously that it should be reappointed, but you know that you have never reappointed the members of the committee. And so the committee cannot report because the committee does not exist because its members have not been appointed. When it was first appointed, we did make an interim report. That's right. But we did not complete our work. You can't solve crime in 4 years. How you expect the committee to bring the recommendations to you if it has not been allowed to do its work? That's a simple problem.
We are agreed, Bain and Grandstown. We agree exactly with you. Talk crime. But he has spent a lot of time studying the crime phenomenon in the country. And he will have discovered that the rise in crime, particularly violent crime in the Bahamas, is underpinned by illegal drugs. And he knows when our drug problem in the Bahamas began. Yeah, I repeat, we are now reaping that which was sowed more than 30 years ago. And the findings of the Commission of Inquiry of 1984 gives us a good base from thence to begin. St. Cecilia, the member for St. Cecilia, the Minister of National Security in last government led by members opposite, said that most of our crime is drug-related. I believe she knows how she speaks. You know, Mr. Speaker, in these drug crimes, one of the things the police is finding is somebody is shot. The police go to investigate it. They do not wish to provide the police any information about who shot them because they want to undertake their own revenge. Soon, we will, of course, to be published. Not that it matters that somebody who is killed is out on bail for an offense or has a long record of criminal conduct. It doesn't matter. But it is good to put in context who are being killed and by whom. It is good to put that in context so we don't make this broad assertion that crime is out of control in this society. And so on, we will publish that list so that public and members opposite and ourselves can see who is who, as a victim or as the alleged perpetrator of the crime. Crime is a complex phenomenon, Speaker. It depends on an accommodating stand for many in a society which benefits from the duplicitous rantings of others, of us, to give it a certain freedom, movement, when we become distracted and focus on feel-good initiatives of limited consequence. I continue to believe, Mr. Speaker, that the most important missing component in our war against crime is the failure of too many taking responsibility for their actions. Excusing the bad and illegal behavior of family members and acquaintances, and perhaps most seriously, willingly benefiting from crime. Benefiting from crime. That is precisely the accommodating landscape that permits the scourge of crime to progress. This urge to place a true burden for the reduction, ultimate elimination of crime beyond ourselves. That ability to place responsibility elsewhere with somebody else with the greatest conviction and not to recognize that without some small or great acquiescence from all of us, there is no way that crime could achieve the level it does in our society. Without some acquiescence by many in society, crime could not be what it is today. That acquiescence from some of us is very considerable, especially when we distinguish between the lawbreaker and his ill-gotten fortune sufficiently to accept his generous donations without the slightest sense of guilt. Or when we look beyond the crime to see a friend we've known for many years and cannot bring ourselves to recognize him as an enemy of society, a candidate for prosecution. Or when we seek to distinguish between the criminal behavior of the gun-toting young man and the outwardly respectable facilitator of that deplorable trade that virtually manufactures that criminal use. I was gratified, Mr. Speaker, for instance, by the commentary made by the member for South Eleuthera in acknowledging the good that we are doing in his constituency, including the repaving of the roads in Tarpon Bay and Rock Sound. Their residents have suffered from poor roads for far too long. And also, Mr. Speaker, the water, yes, he did. He did. But he didn't have to say thanks. I just wanted to acknowledge it, because the water in Tarpon Bay was atrocious. I mean, there's no question about it. It should never have been allowed. I told him before that, he should have gotten his government to do so. They didn't. We've done so. And the people of Tarpon Bay will have good, fresh water thanks to the F&M government. Mr. Speaker, now, the most distressful and painful commentary made by anybody in this debate, as far as I'm concerned, was that made by the member for Exuma when he accused my government of being uncaring, spiteful, and vindictive. This is a charge, Mr. Speaker, I will not soon forget. We did a whole lot for Exuma. A whole lot for Exuma. But no comment has been made. That has pained me as much as that. You are a very ungrateful man. Speaker, I had occasion to visit Long Island, Central and North Eleuthera, and Central and North Cat Island over the Labor Day holiday. That is, to visit Long Island, Central and North Eleuthera, and Central and North Cat Island over the last Labor Day holiday weekend, And I was very pleased by the condition of the roads on each of those islands. Gone are the days pre-F&M coming to office where travel writers routinely described the pothole-filled roads in the Family Islands in featured articles on Family Island. I did hear the concern of the member for my cow about the condition of the road in Matthew Town. I did ask him, did he know the condition of the road in Matthew Town in 1992 when the F&M won? He didn't. So he has nothing to compare. But notwithstanding, we will review the situation, and Inagua can be assured that this road will be fixed just like every place else. And the member for Cat Island, Rumpkins, and Salvador sought to remind me, during his contribution, that on the campaign trail in 2007, I promised Cat Island that if they supported me, I'm going to get the whole story out right now. Whole story. I promised Cat Island that if you support me, if you vote for me, I will build you a new terminal at the New Bight Airport, and I'll start it in 90 days. They didn't vote for me. No, I'm going further than that. I'm going further than that. I'm going further than that.
Yeah, that's a thing. That's a thing. That's a thing, right?
This new airport terminal, Speaker, which neither he, their representative, Dan, or Sense has been able to provide for them. Notwithstanding, he was an influential member of the PLP from 2002 to 2007. Notwithstanding, when we left office, before I left office in 2002, we determined to build a terminal at New Bight in Cat Island, and left in place everything to proceed to do that.
So,
Everything.
that's right. He didn't do it.
Including the financial means to do so. Every other budget in this House, Mr. Speaker, the member for Cat Island, Rumpkins, and Salvador didn't have, let me not characterize it, he refused to stand up on his feet in here and complain about the non-construction of the terminal in Cat Island. On a number of occasions, sitting in the back over there, by where St. Thomas More said, I got up and I said, I am speaking on behalf of Cat Island, and I ask for this terminal, please, because he wouldn't ask for it for you. But yet he comes here now and says, I ain't built it.
He needs some part of election.
But notwithstanding, Mr. Speaker, notwithstanding his party didn't do it, he never verbalized it in here. Whatever the reason is, I don't know. He's able to verbalize it now, because he's out now. When they were in, they couldn't say it. We have designed, Mr. Speaker, a terminal, and the only reason why we have not proceeded with the construction of the airport was because the terminal was because of a request by the Cat Island Partners Limited, that is the company who are developing the PGA resort on the island, that they wanted to have input into the terminal's design. That has not progressed as quickly as we would have hoped or expected since 2008. I've now instructed they be given final notice that unless we get their input by the middle of July, we propose to proceed with the construction of a terminal on New Bight, Cat Island, shortly thereafter. So I can give you a new date now. Before the end of this calendar year, the terminal in New Bight, Cat Island will commence. Thanks to the F&M. Mr. Speaker, the member for Cat Island also said, and I want to make the same point I made about North Andros. Members, especially senior members of the House, shouldn't be making these wild statements that are not backed up by facts. You know, as an example, Bain and Granstown takes great care to analyze, study his facts, etc., before he makes his speeches. Whatever the conclusions are, is a different story. But he seeks to get facts.
Yes.
Yep.
We may have different opinion, but we can work with the same set of facts. And so the member for Cat Island, who is the deputy leader of his body, and who expects to replace his leader in a short period of time. In fact, I'm told, and you can deny it now, I'm told that you told some of my men in Cat Island over the weekend that if Christie is not your leader, the PLP will win all the seats, but Christie is dicey.
My Christie's what?
It's dicey. Could go either way. and that your man for Elizabeth was present,
Stand up and
and your man for Elizabeth, I got witnesses right in the house. His man from Elizabeth, the member for Elizabeth, somebody asked him, say, listen, I thought you supported Christie. He turned around and he says, Brave is my daddy.
They try and salt and pepper too?
I don't care what they said, let him a little brave. You are a big brave. Mr. Speaker,
That's his daddy?
I make the point about
DNA?
I make the point about checking the facts. The member for Cat Island said that we had fired immigration and customs officers as examples because of the debt being too high. I want to advise the member for Cat Island Lumpkin to talk about the following facts. 16 immigration officers have been retired, and 4 have been redeployed in the service. That's 20. I also want to advise him that since that time, we have employed 63 additional trainee immigration officers, a net of 43. But you can do the math yourself.
count that.
As regards customs, I want to note that 25 officers have been redeployed elsewhere in the service. Some 22 have retired or been dismissed since 2009. Between 2009 and now, 193 new customs officers have been engaged. Again, I say, you do the math. But members opposite the Speaker never cease to amaze me. Yesterday, the member for Farm Road in Centerville managed to reach a new level. He has informed the Bahamian people that he will lead the next government of the Bahamas. Very brazen. He said, I will be. I suppose you could fill it, and it happens. Unlike him, I can't make any such pronouncement. I don't have that power. But I and my colleagues can say this. If we are a better choice, and if we're elected, we will give effective and incorruptible service to the people of the Bahamas. We can also say, we have a record, check our record, and compare it to theirs.
Yes, yes, yes.
But the member sought in his contribution, Mr. Speaker, to take full credit for every project realized by the government during the past 5 years. Everything we do that's good is because of them. Oh, everything bad is yours. I've never met a set of people like this in my life who cannot conceive that the other side can do something good. It has to be them.
Yep.
If it's good, we did it. We had it in plan. We thought about it
On the drawing board.
on the drawing board.
In the pipe.
If it's bad, no. He claimed the development at Albany and Barmar was recently broke ground. He didn't say this government failed to complete either deal.
Right.
He didn't say we didn't complete the deal. We started, we didn't complete it.
Unfinished.
That's how he and they are. Plenty talk, but none to little action. Completion of both deals left to the F&M. And while Albany was well funded, Barmar was not. The world knows the story about that. But he's also convinced, Mr. Speaker, that there's a singular solution to crime in the Bahamas: urban renewal. And he is unwilling to accept that is remodel or version of any existing urban renewal community policing program is not necessarily the best and certainly not only the legitimate organization of the program. It is clear that the government's obsession with politicizing urban renewal and collecting accolades for the program resulted in neglect of other critically important components of anti-crime initiatives, including expansion of court infrastructure, increased manpower, the judicial system, criminal legislative reform, introduction of state-of-the-art anti-crime technology like CCTV and monitoring ankle bracelets, improvements in the administration of justice so as to improve the rate of successful prosecutions. All initiatives are now receiving attention, and we welcome at the same time that the urban renewal program. I was especially amused, though, and it's not the first time he said it, so I want to respond to him on it, that the leader of the opposition, the Member of Parliament for Farm Road and Centreville, expressed his objection to our hiring Mrs. Ella Lewis, a former teacher, retired public servant, a former F&M electoral candidate in the Farm Road and Centreville constituency, hiring her in the urban renewal program. Apparently, to do that, apparently, that is too political. That is too political. Hampton recalls she had offered her candidacy in opposition to him in 2007. He didn't have the same objection, and you all didn't have the same objection. Then you all hired Ruby Ann Darling Cooper, a former PLP candidate, and PLP member of Parliament, and Parliamentary Secretary, to work in the same urban renewal operation before the F&M came to office. That was okay. Not for Ella Lewis, though. No, I'm not yielding, Mr. Speaker. I'm not yielding, Mr. Speaker. I'm not yielding.
That's a fact. That's a fact.
I'm accustomed to member opposite the Speaker. They have one set of rules for themselves and another set of rules for other people. They simply believe, Mr. Speaker, that if it's a PLP, it's okay.
Point of order.
FM, it's not okay.
Point of order.
Put them with that, Mr. Speaker. I yield.
Point of order. Honourable member for Yamoussoukro. Yeah, what's your point of order?
Mr. Speaker, the point of order is that the member is, I think, deliberately misleading this House and the Bahamian people, because first of all, Ruby Ann Darling was not hired in urban renewal. The first point, though, is that the current, Miss Ellis, what's her name? Ms. Lewis. Ms. Lewis was appointed as the head of the urban renewal program under this administration. Ruby Ann Darling was appointed in housing, although but not under urban renewal, and she liaised with the house. She dealt with the housing problems, the housing matters. She was not hired by urban renewal, and she certainly was not the head of urban renewal. Neither had she been a part of any open frontline politics in recent times.
One point is that she was working
Mr. Speaker, also, the member of Parliament for Farm Road and Centreville is himself a politician. He was the head of urban renewal. What is he?
Started it in his constituency.
He then spoke, Mr. Speaker, with passion about I'm talking about you, Centreville. Centreville spoke with passion, Mr. Speaker, about his plans for beach and parks. At Montague, at West Bay, in the vicinity of the caves and elsewhere in Nassau. He had a book in his hand. He always got books. Can't beat him for that. He got books, he got plans all the time.
All the time. All the time.
He provided insight into what he planned and what he discussed with developers of Albany and with Kirsten International. I want to make a point about Kirsten International. I noted yesterday that the member for Centreville and Farm Road and Centreville talked about a meeting he and some of his colleagues had with Mr. Kirstner in connection with their proposed development at Hurricane Hole and the new timeshare. I alluded to that when I spoke in the budget. I didn't say the source of my information, but I was offended, deeply hurt and offended, pained, that the editor of the Tribune, business section, could call Kirstner International to speak to one Mr. Fields to ask if what I said is true. I was offended.
My.
I think it was the height of disrespect and disregard in this country. And the Prime Minister said it. Carry it if you find it's untrue. Do what you got to do.
You get grounds to do that. You get grounds to do that. You were at the same meeting where we advised the Prime Minister.
Mr. Christie? No, it's not the same meeting.
This was
He
before.
was at the same meeting that I was at.
When was
No,
the
no,
meeting?
we're not talking about any meeting.
Before the budget committee.
No,
Now,
no.
Why don't you listen? Shut
No,
up
no,
and listen.
no. You don't understand what I'm saying.
No, he doesn't.
I am saying that I said that I expect that Kirstner International will commence their development of Hurricane Hole before the end of this year.
other things too.
Before the end of this year. I didn't say the basis upon which I came to that conclusion. I made the point that yesterday, the leader of the opposition, who also spoke to Mr. Kirstner, said that he had told him the same thing. And that reminded me of my troubled position with respect to what happened with the Tribune business editor. That's all I'm seeking to do. That's all I'm seeking to do. I didn't need to say the source of my information to say that I expect this to happen. I don't make wild statements. And the editor of the business section, Mr. Neil Hartnell, should know better than that. He shouldn't do that again to me. I found it very offensive. I wouldn't do it to him. Mr. Speaker, but back to the leader of the opposition, talking about his plans for parks and beach improvements. He had no explanation as to why in 5 years not a single recreational beach park was created by his government.
Not one.
That the one park was created, fixed in Pinewood, was by Kirstner International. But compared to my government's record in office, creating a new seaside park at Sanders Beach and putting in train the restoration projects at the beach at Montague, and Sanders Beach seaside parks, and work is scheduled to commence in them imminently. This action is in keeping with our conviction that Bahamians deserve high-quality recreational spaces. That is why, during 2 previous terms in office, we created the Goodman's Bay Seaside Park, over great opposition from many. Created tennis and basketball park west of the A.F. Adley Junior High School.
Which they put school trailers on.
Redeveloped the inner city park at Nassau Street opposite the Albury Sales Primary School. Formalized the down-home fish fry and acquired the open grain space at West Bay at Ferguson Manor, creating a new window to the sea. We don't dream and begin to make plans to improve life for Bahamians.
We open our eyes so we can see what we do.
We deliver on our promises. Do not pay any attention to anything that's phantom. Keep your eyes on the prize. You stick with them. The member for Farnborough, the Speaker, also recalled yesterday's role in early plans for the construction of the new National Stadium at the QE Sports Center. Recalled his trip to China. I was glad he went to China, but he forgot to acknowledge that it was the F&M that reversed his party's decision to establish diplomatic relationship with Taiwan and to recognize the people, and that it was us who recognized the People's Republic of China as the government of all China that made his travel possible. In fact, because of that decision to go with Taiwan is how he got back to the PLP. Because Irvin Knowles got fired, and Irvin Knowles was named the ambassador to Taiwan. And I told him, sit right over there, do not take a step, don't go anywhere, because when we win, don't carry your family, don't buy no furniture. I didn't go. And so, Mr. Speaker, it was our policy that cost you to be able to go to China. To me, it was the Hu Jintao president. And people just appreciate if you would acknowledge it when you speak. Since you seek to take credit for everything else, at least acknowledge it. He also omitted to acknowledge that his government permitted the first delivery of steel for the construction of the stadium to languish and rust on site because his government just could not, as was customary with them, conclude the necessary to facilitate the commencement of construction.
What happened to the steel?
Always tardy. Always tardy. Never on time. Never timely. Perhaps my greatest surprise, listen to him though, was his suggestion that Dominican fishing vessels be blown out of the water and found poaching in territorial waters. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. I'm sure he misspoke.
Elizabeth spoke.
Right honourable member for Farm Road and Centerville.
It is fanciful language, Mr. Speaker, and the point of order is this, that clearly what I was saying was predicated on the lawful apprehension of a fishing vessel where once the people were prosecuted and they were found to be illegally poaching in our waters, the courts then, get the point, the courts then would have the option of either confiscating the boat
Yes, honourable member.
or destroying it, clearly.
That happens today. That happens now.
Exactly.
A fishing boat is found, taken to court, convicted, the magistrate order the destruction of the boat, and the boat is destroyed.
Not blown.
The member for Centerville Farm Road said, and he should get the quote himself, we have to blow them out of the water.
Yep.
Blow them out of the water.
That's right. That's right.
Violence.
No qualification.
Yeah.
No qualification.
You could never do that.
A startling statement by a former prime minister and a man who continues to harbor the desire to lead again.
That's not what blow out the water.
We must presume that those fishing vessels are typically manned by human beings. I'm not aware of any Bahamian law which would authorize our defense force to summarily execute fish poachers, which is what the leader of the opposition appeared to have been proposing in his outrageous statement. Yes, I will. Right now.
Right honourable member for Farm Road and Centerville.
The Prime Minister does not, Mr. Speaker. The point of order is the intent of the Prime Minister's words, Mr. Speaker, is to say and put on the record that in this place I said the Bahamas should take a hostile act without consideration, without a determination of legality to blow a ship out of the water. No, sir. No, sir. No, sir. And I do not want, Mr. Speaker, and let me just say this, Mr. Speaker. I just want one final point, sir. One final point. And Mr. Speaker, just listen to this. And Mr. Speaker, if in fact, I just want to finish it, matter. If in fact, Mr. Speaker, my words were interpreted in that way, Mr. Speaker, I would wish to withdraw any possible imputation, Mr. Speaker, because that was not what I intended.
Against Patel, go next thing, yes and no? How that work?
Mr. Speaker, the leader of the opposition said, after diplomatic contact with San Domingo, we should blow them out of the water.
That's right.
Because we can't afford for these people to be doing this thing to our fishing resources. His comments were wholly inappropriate and wrong. They are unhelpful, especially at the time we seek to promote peaceful settlements of disputes in the country. When we seek to lower the tenor of anger in discourse. When we seek to promote respect for law and order and generally for human rights in the Bahamas. Once again, the leader of the opposition was appealing to emotion. He was talking to the fishermen. He was talking to the fishermen. Of course, he neglects to remember that, the F&M has bought the Defense Force 2 new aircraft since we came to office. I don't know how many different boats we bought, etc., etc. And so in terms of protecting the fishing grounds of the Bahamas from poachers, There's never been a greater amount of resources available than now. We're building a port in Ragged Island, spending nearly $20 million in Ragged Island to facilitate the Defense Force being able to operate from there, making sure the airport is working, is capable of accommodating them, so they can go out to the fishing grounds quite easily. And no, Mr. Speaker, we believe that the boats should be confiscated once they have gone to court, and that if an order is made by the magistrate, we should carry it out.
Yes.
But no, we don't have the means by which we can say that we should blow them out of the water. Once again, leader of the opposition appealed to the emotion, to the lowest common denominator of the society, and his bombastic, ill-considered remark was made to regain regardless of the consequence.
Yes.
This is unacceptable for a leader.
Yes.
But to be blunt, a leader you are not. Mr. Speaker, members have officially launched their campaign for the 2012 general election. Under all their protestation, this election budget was their plan to use the debate to kick off their campaign. That's okay. Having opposed the sale of BTC,
What you think you do?
having criticized the government for its borrowing to facilitate a massive infrastructural upgrade, and having objected to the terms agreed with the China State Construction Company's principal contractor for Baha, the leader of the opposition now concludes that we left all these matters to be dealt with in this period to gain an election advantage. Of course, that logic escapes me. I'd like people to wake at any time. You know what pain I have to undergo every day? See, unlike many of them out there, my telephone is listed in the book.
Amen.
Any Tom, Dick, and Harry can call me.
Anytime.
And they call me any kind of time.
That's right.
6, 6:15, 6:30 in the morning, etc. And they ain't got to go through nobody to get to me.
That's right.
If I'm home, I answer the phone myself. If I can have their help. So if I could help somebody get a job before now, I'd have been happy to do so, because my life would have been more pleasant, more restful than it is nowadays. We remain committed, Mr. Speaker, to bringing better for all Bahamians. We will work continuously and entirely to fulfill our agenda. And we assure the Bahamas that better is coming again. Finally, I note, Mr. Speaker, this budget is intended to continue the fulfillment of my government's promise to the Bahamian people. We ask the Bahamian people to place their trust in us, and that we would do our utmost to deliver changes for the better, to modernize our country, to improve its infrastructure and make the delivery of our public services more efficient and effective, to reform our administrative procedures so as to reduce red tape and bureaucracy,
Yes.
to advance our legislative framework to respond to their evolving economic conditions and demands, and to better arm us to face the challenges presented by an increasingly bold criminal element. Delivering on our promises and commitments has involved a tremendous amount of change over the past 4 years. Indeed, the amount of change that continues to take place in our nation, led by my energetic, committed, and ethically positive government, is, I believe, truly outstanding, if unappreciated by members opposite. I accept, Mr. Speaker, that change is resistant. It's a resistant virus in and of itself, and when combined with the fallout of the global recession or depression, can become highly resistant to any medication. The change is here, and it is continuous. We are determined to ensure that our people are able not only to cope with, but succeed in a changing environment, which is our reality. Preparing our people and our country's institution for success in the future is what our aggressive law reform and other efforts are all about. It is similarly what our infrastructural modernization program is about, what the introduction of telemedicine is all about, and what job readiness training is all about. This is what expanded agricultural initiatives and support is about. This is what environmental stewardship is about. This is what e-government is about. This, Mr. Speaker, is about improving government. The budget supports our policies and programs to improve our country. Our actions and policies are based on our fundamental principle. We once again offer our services to the Bahamian public, and they can determine whether they like us to continue or they want to go elsewhere. All my government's programs are based on service to the Bahamian people, their welfare, their health, their education, their comfort, their safety, and their pursuit of their full potential. Isn't that vain, Mr. Speaker? I wish to commend this budget to all the members of the House. I so move, Mr. Speaker. I just wanted to make one point.
Right honourable member for North Abaco. This is
What is the number, sir? 274. 274 what? Hired or what number? How many are hired? Never mind, Mr. Speaker, thank you. No, I wanted to know total number. How many say they were? How many are not?
The question is that a bill for an act for the appropriation of diverse sums of money for and towards defraying the expenses of the government of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas on revenue account for the financial year commencing 1st July 2011 and ending 30th June 2012 be read a second time and committed. As many as are in favor would remain seated. Those that oppose would rise. Ordered that the bill be read a second time and committed.
A bill for an act for the appropriation of diverse sums of money for and towards defraying the expenses of the government of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas on revenue account for the financial year commencing 1st July 2011 and ending 30th June 2012.
Further second reading and committal of bills. Right honourable member for Mount Moriah.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I move that a bill for an act for the appropriation of the sum of $279,703,387 for and towards defraying the expenses of the government of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas for capital development for the financial year ending 30th June 2012 be read a second time and passed. Be read a second time.
The question is that a bill for an act for the appropriation of the sum of $279,703,387 for and towards defraying the expenses of the government of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas for capital development for the financial year ending 30th June 2012 be read a second time and committed. As many as are in favor would remain seated. Those that oppose would rise. Ordered that the bill be read a second time and committed.
A bill for an act for the appropriation of the sum of $279,703,387 for and towards defraying the expenses of the government of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas for capital development for the financial year ending 30th of June 2012.
Further second reading and committal of bills. Honourable member for Mount Moriah.
Mr. Speaker, I move that a bill for an act for the appropriation of further diverse sums of money for and towards defraying the expenses of the government of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas during the fiscal year commencing 1st July 2010 and ending 30th June 2011 be read a second time and committed.
The question is that a bill for an act for the appropriation of further diverse sums of money for and towards defraying the expenses of the government of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas during the fiscal year commencing 1st July 2010 and ending 30th June 2011 be read a second time and committed. As many as are in favor would remain seated. Those that oppose would rise. Ordered that the bill be read a second time and committed.
A bill for an act for the appropriation of further diverse sums of money for and towards defraying the expenses of the government of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas during the fiscal year commencing 1st July 2010 and ending 30th of June 2011.
Further second reading and committal of bills. Honourable member for Mount Moriah.
Mr. Speaker, I move that a bill for an act for the appropriation of further diverse sums of money for and towards defraying the expenses of the government of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas during the fiscal